But all right, this is something I wanted to watch. This is the, if you type exclamation point mining in chat, and I'll put them in the link below for when I put this up on YouTube later, the Red Monster SC mining cheat sheets are updated for the new mining changes. Main things, and I'm sure he'll go into this, is they've decided that a few rock types will more often spawn rocks that a prospector can mine. And then a few other types are more often going to spawn larger rocks that are meant for group mole mining. And his guides will tell you sort of where to go and where to find these things. So he posted a companion video with those for those guides on his YouTube channel a couple days ago called A Change of Scale: Why You Should Care About Mining Deposit Size Updates in Star Citizen 3.22. He is the mining guy. So if you don't know Red Monster SC, he's linked in chat right now. That is your dude for mining, okay? I like to do it. I enjoy doing it. I definitely understand it, but not at the level that Red. If you want to get into the weeds, Red's your man, okay? So here, let's jump into it.
Hey folks, I'm Red Monster SC, and in this video, we're going to cover the changes to mining in Alpha 3.22. Specifically, changes to deposit sizes that are aimed at creating a little bit of balance between the solo and the multiplayer mining crews. We're also going to talk about which locations you should be heading to see the biggest difference in those mining deposit sizes, and I'll wrap up with my thoughts on the current state of mining.
All right.
Now, there haven't been any changes to mineral parameters, lasers, modules, or gadgets, and the minerals per deposit type have not been updated either. However,
what's funny is it feels like they have. For some reason, I feel like I'm breaking larger rocks than I have before. And I think it's just that the game has become a little bit more stable, to be honest.
There's one key update, and it's a major game changer for solo operators. And that is the minimum and maximum size for certain deposit types to spawn in with. Now, in order to notice this, you need to know where to look. There's going to be specific locations in the verse where it'll be a lot more obvious that you've got smaller rocks or that the rocks are going to be on a larger scale. I'm not going to bore you with all the math on how I got to this point, but I will cover some of the key details right now. Everything prior to Alpha 3.22 and the majority of the rocks that are going to be generated today will generate on a scale between 0.2 and 1.0, where the lower end of the scale are those rocks that are easy for the solo operator to tackle on their own, and those on the higher end of the scale are going to require large mining organizations with coordinated effort. The variety of rock sizes here led to an inconsistent success rate from mining operations, which wasn't a fun experience. Solo miners found themselves...
I feel, is this even for a single... Oh, I'm in the way. Where do I go? Give me a second. We're going to switch scenes. I'm gonna title this one real fast. Bam, bam, and bam. Now I'm not in the way. Okay.
Skipping over the majority of the rocks that they came across simply because they were too large to break and large.
My question here is the 0.4 like a solo mole as well, like just a single laser rock, whether it's size 2 or size 3?
Mining organizations passed over a lot of the smaller rocks because it just wasn't worth the time to scoop. The first significant change is that M and Q type asteroids have had their minimum size increase from a 0.2 to a 0.4. That means you're not going to find small asteroids of these types as often anymore, and it's going to be more consistently on the larger side, which is good for large-scale mining operations that want to make sure you have consistent rocks that are going to fill your moles. But it is going to be a challenge for a solo operator if you're out in the asteroid belt, come across these M and Q type asteroids that are going...
And these are just asteroids. And the other thing here is you got to remember M and Q. There's also a number associated with M and Q asteroids when you scan and you point your laser or point your scanner, I guess, at the bubble. So they're just types. So they're asteroid types. There's M, there's Q, there's S, there's R. There's a bunch of different type asteroids. It's literally the name when you scan them. It'll say Q type asteroid. And remember, asteroids are only in space, not on the ground. So then there's also a what is it called? Like a signal number that goes with it. And for basically there'll be a base number. Let's say M and Q asteroids are 1800 and 1900. Well, if there are 2 M asteroids, then it will show 3600. Yes, signature, I think, is the right word. So then it'll show 3600. So if you know, and now, unfortunately, the numbers aren't that round, so you're going to have to, like, possibly, if you want to, like, really, really, really min-max this, you would get into knowing the like multiplication table and what's divisible, by these numbers, and know from a distance that you're dealing with an M and Q asteroid, and know that you're going to that, right? So yeah, it's like you don't need to keep a calculator handy. You just need to memorize a few numbers, because the clusters are never more than like 5 or 6. So you would have to just remember 5 or 6 numbers, and that's really it. And then multiply that by 2 for M and Q. And then same with the other ones. But
going to be the majority of them too large for you to break on your own. The next change is that several surface deposits have had their maximum size decreased from 1 down to 0.8. This means that you're not going to find many of those extremely large rocks on these surface deposits, and they are obsidian, quartzite, and shale. You are going to be more consistently finding rocks that the solo operator can break, but there are still going to be several that you are going to need a multi-crew ship to break. And finally, felsic and gneiss have had their maximum size decrease from 1 down to 0.6.
Yep. And these are, so the M and Q, like the lettered, those are asteroids. The names are only on the surface. And you can also use Red's guides, and we're only halfway through the video, to find where you're more likely to find obsidian, quartzite, shale, felsic, and gneiss. And then I wonder if we're going to get to larger sizes.
It means that on a more consistent basis, that solo operator is going to be able to break these rocks on their own. And it gives you something to target if you're out in a solo prospector just looking for something easy to mine. The result of all these changes is that the asteroid belt is going to be a little bit more of a preference for a large-scale mining group who wants to find those larger M and Q type asteroids in a more consistent basis, as well as providing a path to success for these solo operators. They can go to the surface locations where these deposit types are more prevalent and have a lot more successful time mining on their own.
And it makes sense. It makes sense because asteroids, like in our universe that we live in here, not in the Star Citizen universe, I've watched YouTube videos about how they would completely break the entire world's economy if we just mined the gold on a single asteroid. Because it would be pure gold, or it's so dense in this material that it's not even close to what we have on Earth, and it would just absolutely crush the value of those rare earth metals, and that's why they call them rare earth metals, because they may not be as rare out there, right? So the idea of those being so large, and that being where you would go for larger, group mining things, it just makes sense. So for the simmers out there, it's not killing your immersion either by them, like, they're gamifying it, but in a logical way, right? So that I think it's just way better to do it this way. And we're gonna have to adjust our mining operation to these changes. We will have prospectors going to moons that handle these things and occasionally call a mole in to break something big. But for the most part, the mole operators are going to be somewhere else completely, perhaps.
Now, that also means it's time to update my mineral percentages by deposit type chart. This has
and to be clear, this is a chart I never looked at. Ever. Never looked at it, never needed to. Now you do. Right? Like, M-type asteroids now have the largest gold percentage of anything that I can see, right? And but it doesn't have a very high quantanium percentage, where C-type asteroids, again, not listed on the large end of things, because M and Q-type have a very large quantanium, but Q-type has a 9% chance at quantanium. The largest being felsic deposit and granite deposits, it looks like.
It's a lot more context than what I've provided in the past, but it's really just providing a detailed view of what's available in the game files. It includes the probability.
Oh, and let me pause it because you could see RS is the signature. So 2 M-type asteroids would be 3,700. So I was actually close there. Yeah, it would be 3,700. But as you could see, nice. Its single rock signature is 1840. So then it would be 3,680, right? So you can see how you can start to memorize these. Some of them are round, but not entirely round. Like 1770, that's a little harder.
Ability for each specific material to appear, the minimum and maximum percentage of material that can be populated, as well as my weighted average for the scale and a weighted average for the mass of that type of deposit based on the materials that are there. Now, you may notice that the percentages for quantanium, some of the other tier 1 materials, do look a lot higher than what we're seeing in the verse. And I think what's happening is that as the rock is generated, it starts from the top and works its way down. And once it's met the quota, once we've hit 100% of total material there, then it stops generating new materials. And that's why we don't see nearly as much quantanium as the recipe's calling for. One other note is that each deposit will have a common type that's going to vary based on the location, and those common types of elements will have a significant impact on your ability to be successful mining that deposit. That's going to increase the total mass of the material, as well as your optimum window size, resistance, and other factors that could significantly change your success mining that deposit. I've updated my ore percentage by location tables with a couple of additional parameters that help identify where those lower mass locations are going to be. Because it's difficult to relay the difference in mass that you're going to find within all of these different asteroid types, I've come up with a mass index. I've sorted the average weighted mass for each combination of asteroid type and common material and assigned an index number, 1 being the lowest and 9 being the highest. There are several deposit types per location, so we wanted to be able to represent both an average that you can expect as well as the range.
All right, this is like... Now we're getting like really... I need to hear this again.
I've updated my ore percentage by location tables with a couple of additional parameters that help identify where those lower mass locations are going to be. Because it's difficult to relay the difference in mass that you're going to find within all of these different asteroid types, I've come up with a mass index. I've sorted the average weighted mass for each combination of asteroid type and common material. And
average weighted mass. All right, I see that on the left side here. So he said 9 was the highest. So ARC L5A has a 6.5, and Crusader L4A has a 6.5. Those would be the largest. And then what you would do is you would scroll across, and you would look for what common materials are there. So why is it weighted so high? Because it's got fucking tungsten in it, man. And tungsten kind of sucks. So I still think we're looking for titanium and aluminum when we're looking for these things, and trying to find the highest weighted that has that, right? And then just in general, I wouldn't go anywhere that doesn't have both Q and M asteroids, right? So her L5 looks okay, but it doesn't have good common materials.
Assign an index number.
These two look the best here. Microtech L3 and L4. Possibly. But we'll see. We'll see what he says.
1 being the lowest and 9 being the highest. There are several deposit types per location, so we wanted to be able to represent both an average that you can expect as well as the range. This average mass index takes into account the deposit scale differences as well as the density of materials that you're going to find within each deposit at that location. I also include the mass index range to give you a better understanding
Yeah,
of the
L5
variety
looks
of
good.
rock masses that
Crusader.
you might encounter at that location. I've also added the mineable material parameters onto the main
L4,
table so
sorry.
that it's easier to make decisions on which materials to go for. And I have thrown in a desirability index. This is my own homegrown math to say this mineral is good or this one should be avoided. It takes into account the mineral value, the density, instability, resistance, window size, and cluster modifiers. A higher number means that you should go for that. A lower or negative number means that you should try to avoid.
Yep. So if you look, there are only 2 common materials that have a high number, and it's titanium and aluminum. So you're looking for planets and moons that have titanium and aluminum a lot because they're desirable for, they're not going to fill your cargo hold, and they have good characteristics that make mining not too difficult. Whereas you could see a tungsten has a negative 0.1. And some of them aren't too bad. Like quartz isn't that bad. Copper's not too bad, but then these .2s aren't great. And then you would think, hephaestonite, boraz, like they're all in the same category in terms of value, but laranite is not worth it. And I think laranite's not worth it because it's so dense. And you can look below and see these red numbers are telling you why they're bad. Of all the tier 2s, laranite is the most dense. Density means it's going to take up more space in your cargo hold, right? All the large numbers, all the really high value, they're all pretty dense. Terranite being the least, or excuse me, bexlite being the least, terranite being okay, gold being very dense, and quantanium being very dense. But again, value-wise is quantanium and then gold. So kind of makes sense. And then you can also see their cluster modifiers, which are pretty important as well. So that's the reason why aluminum is very good and titanium is very good, because their cluster modifiers are so high, which means they stick to each other, which means gold, let's say if you have a gold and titanium rock, if titanium wants to stick together and not become together, like a rock that is a combination of gold and titanium, which is not an ideal thing, then it's bad. So you want common materials to stick together, so you are only scooping the good stuff, basically.
Some specific locations you might want to go to if you're looking for smaller rocks in deep space are the Yellow Belt, but I would be careful about pirates and NPCs there, as well as crew elf.
It might mean that it's less dense. Whatever it is I see, it fills more of the SCU, so it might mean less dense. I'm not sure.
3, Mike L1.
They're not desirable, though, for those reasons.
And next up, we have the ore percentages by location on the planet's surfaces. You'll notice a much lower average mass index here, as well as the mass index range being a lot narrower window in general. There are some places where we've got a pretty wide range. Locations you want to keep an eye out for are going to be Microtech, Selin, Yella, and I'd put Clio on there, but Clio does have some weather that makes it difficult for a solo operator. And finally, just a note on the mass indexes. There is going to be a lot of overlap between an index of 1 and moving up. This is kind of an estimation on my part, but because of averages and the range that these rocks can spawn in on, as well as the material density, you could see a lot of overlap between those indexes, and it's not a perfect metric. Each of the charts that I've shown will be available, as well as several others that are updated for the 3.22 current build, so you can visit redmonstergaming.com or check the link in the description or the pinned comment to get to that full updated set of charts for 3.22. Now, as far as my thoughts on the state of mining with 3.22, I appreciate the size changes, and I feel like it gives us a better diversity between locations to be successful.
Yeah.
However, it is difficult to figure out where those locations are going to be, but that leaves an opportunity for content creators like myself to go out and build some resources and practice a little bit of math.
Also, I'm just thinking about it. Now the way they communicate things is like they tell you how much SCU the rock is, and then they tell you the percentage of that SCU that is whatever. So I think the real number that matters the most is cluster modifier, probably. But yeah. So I'm just thinking about it a little bit.
The biggest complaint I've been hearing is that CIG doesn't care about solo mining, and I feel like this does go a long way to address that, but knowing where to mine is going to be key for your solo operators.
Yeah.
I still think there needs to be mining missions.
Agreed.
The lack of onboarding system makes mining challenging to learn, and I feel like mining missions and a reputation tier could help upskill players within the game systems and not having to go to outside resources and the guide system to pick up the ropes.
Yeah.
I also feel like creating missions to mine specific materials or to buy into a highly valuable mining claim can create opportunities to learn and develop. I still feel like the top tier materials are too random. We're scanning every deposit we come across because every single one of them has a chance to spawn Quantanium or one of the other tier 1 materials. I stand by my assertion that there should be rock archetypes focused on either resistance, instability, or density, and we can focus down on specific material types that will always be there and have a more...
I think the intention is for it to be there. They've stated that a million times, and we talked about it on the podcast as well. Is everything that he's saying now, I think, is something that they want to do, but the reason that they don't do it now is because I guess they want us going out there. I don't really know. I think it's because we don't have enough locations. And I know that sounds crazy because there's a lot of planets, a lot of moons, but I think what they really want to do at some point is once we get... think about how many more locations we get when Pyro opens up. I think what they're holding off for is being like, yeah, so now that we have all these other locations, you're just never going to find Bexalite in Stanton. You're never going to find Terranite in Stanton. You're only finding those in Pyro or in Nyx or wherever they decide to take us, right? So that will start to turn... if you look at the right side of one of his charts where there's, very little, there's only like, okay, the common materials are only located on these planets and moons. I think that represents where they want to go with everything else. But I think they didn't like the idea that all we were doing was spending time scanning. And I think that they didn't really achieve that goal there. They can spawn a ship. Why can't they spawn a rock? They can. And they do. I see what you mean, like at a mission location. I don't know. The last I checked, when they were planning on doing mining missions, they said that they needed more tech and more support. And guess who is probably that support team? It's probably the EUPU gameplay team, which they did all the salvage stuff. They did all the other things and engineering. And so I think vehicle tractor beam, they just done everything. So when were they supposed to get to mining missions? I don't think they were ever able to. So hopefully in the new year.
More consistent and enjoyable mining experience where deposit types matter more than they do right now. Overall, I'm looking forward to exploring some new mining locations. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Are the asteroid changes frustrating you as a solo miner, or are your group mining sessions getting a major upgrade? Also, don't forget to check out the merch store. I've got a new topographic desk mat, mug, and mousepad that are perfect for the cultured mining enthusiast.
Dude, he's all about merch. It's so awesome.
You can connect with me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Discord, and Patreon using the links in the description. And thank you to my patrons for your ongoing support, funding channel giveaways, and other perks for the Red Legion community. And finally, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, because there's a lot of math I can make up, and you just saw half of it.
Yeah. That was a lot of work behind the scenes. I know he works really hard on that stuff. We have a DM between him, me, and Croncy where we chat every once in a while about mining, and that one is... I think we're in a good place now outside of the issues that he stated at the end. Obviously, we need mining missions. Obviously, I think... you know what? Actually, I'm gonna bring up another point. I don't think it's just the the amount of space or locations that we need. I think they also are waiting for crafting to really separate out what we are looking for, so you know where to go to find certain things. I think maybe even so far as base building as well. Perhaps I think maybe base building. I'm not sure. So base building is one of those things where we did see the laser shooting into the ground, right? And what happened there is you probably have to scan the surface. And there's probably all this tech that needs to happen to be like, think if you guys played Starfield, like this really far out view of a planet, knowing that this biome or this area on this planet is more dense with these items or these rocks or these harvestables or name whatever here. So those things are not non-existent, you know? So that's where we're at. And yeah, I hope it gets better, but I think it's pretty good now.